Hi, my name is Elliott. I'm the creator and founder of Homeschoolingtorah.com, and I hope you're going to grab a drink, pull up a chair, definitely get your Bible because you're going to need it. Join us because today we're going to talk about how to get meals on the table, get all of that prepped so we can have good food in our bellies. And what does that even look like? This is the last day of the 2022 Homeschool Family Conference, and I hope you joined us this morning for our session on finances and economics because it kind of plays into this session. And then tonight we're going to end with a grand shebang of getting our houses completely in order and ready for a new school year to start. Today I'm going to be really practical. This afternoon, let's talk about how to get meals on the table and get everything healthy so our families feel good and our kids can learn, because I'm absolutely convinced of the fact that if you want brains to grow and memories to remember things, you have to have good nutrition inside in order to feed them. So let's talk about it, but I want to keep this session on the level of tips and suggestions. I don't have it all down. I don't want to say that I do, because if you come and visit me, you're going to find areas that I'm weak in and still need to work on. But let's start by looking at the Word of God and seeing what the Bible says about health and nutrition so that at least we have a standard we can go to. This part will be thus says Yehovah and not Ann, but trying to put it into practice, that's just going to be my Ann tips and suggestions, and I absolutely do not have this down. So I need help from you just as much as maybe I can help you. So first of all, meal prep and getting food on the table, we have to make sure that it is biblically clean food. It is defined by the Father as food, because there's lots of things around that aren't food. So I could grab a rock behind me and eat it, and that's not considered food. There are some things that he calls food. First of all, he wants us to eat things that he created for food. So let's go to Genesis chapter 1, because we got to start at the beginning, right, where the Creator made things. Genesis 1:29 through 30. And God said, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it shall be for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food." And it was so. So, the plants and the seeds that they contain are our food. And not just our food, but the animals' food as well. And that's going to be really important, because then if you go over to Genesis chapter 9, verses 1 through 4, and I guess I won't read them right now, but Noah is coming off of the ark, and, I better read them, because it would be better. I'm going to misquote it. Noah said, he blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Now, I want you to think about something for a second. That's the same thing he said to Adam and Eve, and he just told them to eat plants and seeds. So why is he going to change something for Noah right here? But what has just happened? A flood has covered the entire world. And I believe this is literally true, not a myth, okay? Sorry, but I do. It's just like God said it. It was this way. The flood covered the entire earth, even higher than the tallest mountain. And there is no food growing, right? And they have stored food, yes, on the ark, but when they get off, their stores have surely be getting low, right, after a year of being on that ark. And on top of that, the world's entire, environment, climate has changed, and it's going to be really difficult to get the harvest that they were getting in the perfect world before the flood. On top of that, we can look into science and study how in the world did the flood actually happen. This is the subject of year 2 of our Homeschooling Torah science curriculum, and we learned that the water burst out from the depths under the earth and shot way out into the atmosphere, and it was such a disruptive force that we shifted the tilt of the earth, And now we have continents that are separated by oceans, and we have mountains, and we have valleys, and we also have springtime and fall and summer and winter. And that is because of the tilt of the earth. And the tilt of the earth made the seasons, and it talks about that right in the verse above this. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. And this was the beginning of that. But that all that water, as it's going down from flooding the earth, and then the tilt of the earth causes the first winter to happen. And when winter happens and that part of the earth is far away from the sun, then you've got ice. You have your first ice ages. Massive parts of the earth would have been frozen. It was a very difficult climate. The growing season is much shorter in many parts of the earth. We can know from studying the world before the flood that it was filled with tropical plants, huge animals, huge people all over the globe. But after the flood, the world has greatly changed. So why is he changing their diet? Because when an animal eats the plants and the seeds, and they store it as meat in their body or give it as milk, or we eat it as the eggs, it's very nutrition dense. So you can eat salads, but you'd have to eat a lot of salads to get as much as a cow who chews the cud and burps it up and chews it again 4 times over, and stores it in her meat or her milk or butter or her cheese. Okay, so those foods are incredibly nutrient dense, and they also were given to us by God to eat, and that's in Genesis chapter 9. Now, it can't be that milk is a bad thing, because he calls Israel, his promised land, the land of milk and honey. So we can't say that God is opposed to eating animal products, right? However, we do know he is opposed to one specific kind of animal that we should not eat, and that's any animal that is unclean. He calls it unclean or unfit for us to eat. It's not kosher. It is not acceptable. It is not considered even food for us as humans. So we're going to turn to Leviticus chapter 11, and you can study this chapter out and see all of the things that you are not to eat. They are considered an abomination to him. So I'm not going to list out all of the ways to avoid clean or to avoid unclean foods, because that would just make this video too long. I'm going to assume that you're going to study that out on your own, and I'm going to put some resources in your handout or below the video so that you can study that out and understand how to avoid any foods that he said are terrible for you and an abomination. So that's going to be a study thing that you're going to need to do on your own and with your children, so that they understand why you're doing what you're doing. You can also go to Deuteronomy 14 and get a list of that. So basically, he has defined what food is. Food is anything that is from the trees and the plants that he made and the seeds that they produce. Seeds are incredibly important because they have the boost of nutrition that makes the next generation of plant come. That's also so incredibly full of nutrition for us. But also the animals that are clean, according to him, the creator, that eat of those green plants and seeds and fruits and vegetables and so on. And it says in Psalm 104, man, we've used this chapter a lot this week. It says in verse 14, he causes the grass to grow for the cattle and vegetation for the service of man, that he may bring forth food from the earth, and wine that makes glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face shine, and bread which strengthens the man's heart. So those are foods that Yehovah considers good for us, which is crazy because that's not really what the culture around us says. But we're going to need to define that just a little bit more, because what we get as oil and bread and wine at our stores is not necessarily what he's referring to right here. See, we have a lot of food that's been tampered with and is not the way he created it, right? So we're going to go to Leviticus 19, and we're going to go to verse 19. And it says, you shall keep or guard my statutes, and you shall not let your livestock breed with another kind. You shall not sow your field with mixed seed, nor shall a garment of mixed linen and wool come upon you. So mixing things that the Father has made really frustrates him, and we're not to do it. So what is he talking about? What are these kinds? So we study this in our Homeschooling Torah year 1 of science, and we spend a good amount of time talking about what a kind is. But in a nutshell, if you go back to Genesis chapter 1, and let's do that, okay, so that we can see it. Things that he made. So let's go to, for instance, verse 21. God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And then he blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So fill the waters. But anyway, when he made a kind is something that can reproduce and fill the earth. If you're not the same kind, you can't be fruitful and multiply. So that's just a simple definition of what a kind is. So when they take and clone sheep using genetics from a totally different kind of animal that would never be able to reproduce together in the wild, that is mixing the seed. That is definitely against his statutes. Why? Because he knows what he's doing, and he created the earth. He is our creator. He knows what is best for us. But when we think we can tamper with his creation and mix a different kind of seed in there, he's like, no, that's an abomination to me. Don't do that. Don't let your livestock breed with another kind. And he says, do not sow your field with a mixed seed. Can you now kind of get what that is? A mixed seed would be something that in a laboratory they have genetically altered. They have manipulated it, and you would never be able in the wild to get those two things to breed together. I don't think there's anything wrong with playing around with hybridization to a point if it's something that could happen just the way God created it. But when we have to manipulate something so that it would never be able to reproduce without our having to fiddle with it every time, now we have a problem. And we might not see that problem right away, but if we were to just go with Leviticus 19 and guard his statutes and keep things the way he created them, we would not have the health problems that we have in our world today. So, how do you avoid GMOs? Well, that's tough. And I'm not sure that the one who's sinning is the one who accidentally eats it or doesn't even know that they're eating it or isn't able to avoid it, because like GMO corn, the pollen travels and you cannot always even avoid this messed up world that we live in. Sometimes it is unavoidable. I think the ones that will bear that punishment is those in the city of Babylon who are so greedy that they have to do this, to get their transportation and such, to travel from one place to another, like we were talking about in our earlier video today. But it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for the people that are eating it to their health. And so, to the best of your ability, stay away from the foods that have been traded in a greedy manner, so that they're full of things that tamper with God's creation. And I don't even have to name the brands because you're already thinking of them, I'm quite sure. So staying away from fake food that is nothing that he ever created. And a simple way to do this is just to read the labels. When you go to the grocery store and you pick up a can and you're reading the back of it and you don't even know what that is, that's a good sign that you probably should put it back, okay? And you're saying, but I can't because I don't know what to do. I have this need and that need, and oh no, I said that word. We said it in an earlier session. We're not supposed to make excuses. Sometimes, however, it is very difficult. It is extremely difficult, and we maybe in the moment do struggle and say, I can't do that, and here's my excuse. I do this too. That's why I said I'm giving you tips and suggestions today, because I'm far from perfect, very, very far from perfect in this. And one of my goals for this school year is to teach my children how to prepare their meals better, because I have teenage daughters and they can help me. You might not have that. So you might have even more of a burden to be able to try to live in this world that's so corrupted and messed up. And I'm not going to tell you that this is easy. This is a hard thing. It's going to take a lot of self-discipline, getting on a schedule, and really monitoring your budget and your finances, and most of all, your energy and time. What do we do while we're waiting for his return? How do we even handle food and all of this? I want to see one more verse in Acts 14. Acts 14:17. And Paul is talking to the people, and he says, Nevertheless, God did not leave himself without a witness, in that he did good. He gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. One of the purposes for eating is to fill our hearts with gladness. So, I mean, even mealtime needs to have a peaceful and happy atmosphere, like we were talking earlier this week. But he did it so he could leave a witness. One of the things is you teach your children about food. Ladies, this is homeschooling. You're teaching them about the Creator. Teach them, go deep into the science of the food that you're eating and discover the Creator who made it. And you'll learn his character and how much he loves you and how much he wants to care for you and provide for your needs and all of the mechanisms he did it by and all of the ways that we can create new things in his image as long as we stick to the statutes that he provided and don't go over the fence into areas where we're dabbling with his creation and ruining his beautiful things. So it is a witness to you and to your children. If you want to raise up children who are staunch creationists, then talk to them about their food and learn about it. Go out into the countryside and find out how food is made. And if at all possible, get yourself a garden and try to do it yourself. So while we're waiting for his return, when he fixes this messed up world and heals us of our health issues and gives us those trees that bear fruit every month and give, their leaves are for healing, we're waiting on that. And we still do have a lot of health problems. We need to have a little bit of grace with ourselves, realizing that we didn't make the whole mess. Our ancestors made a lot of it, and we need to ask forgiveness to our Father and repent of their ways and turn and make a new path. We also have to have a lot of self-control. Then that's going to be really, really hard. I'm going to talk about some of the fake foods and messed up foods and just list them. And think about, if you listened to my earlier session about economics and about how trade from one city to another built our prosperous society that we live in. I want you to think about how the food was such a key part of that and why we have some of the messed up foods we do, okay? Especially think about money. Shelf-stable foods. Shelf-stable foods are full of preservatives that are harmful to us, but if you're going to transport a food from China to the United States, you're going to have some shelf stability, right? How about refining the foods? The very word refining means that the rich people ate them and they wanted them to look very pretty on the plate. And so to do that, you get rid of the brown and the hull that's around the seeds, and you refine it so it's white and clean, because that was considered refined. Okay, that's what it means to refine something. But what have we done? We've removed part of the seed, and the seed is for our good. Oh my goodness, we have no sense. Okay, what about hydrogenated oils? That's when we meddle with things in the laboratory. We need to be able to take an oil that is cheaply grown somewhere in cheap vegetable plants, okay? Instead of using expensive cattle, we use a cheap seed, but that seed is never going to stay solid at room temperature. So in order to make it solid, we have to artificially insert a hydrogen atom into it to make it stable and solid. Now we can bake with it, and we didn't have to slaughter any animals, which are very expensive compared to growing a plant. That's called hydrogenization, and that is so bad for us. We often call these trans fats, okay? That's how you're usually going to hear it, or partially hydrogenated, shortening or whatever. But we had to do that to be able to transport it and to lower the costs, right? How about oils that are transported that are liquid? Oftentimes, by the time they get from one part to another, they're rancid, and the rancid oils don't taste good. So a lot of times they'll sterilize them and do all kinds of things to them that they don't resemble much of the oil that came from the fruits and the seeds. How about our milk and our cheeses, that they're pasteurized and homogenized? I mean, you can't transport milk very far without it going bad, so you had to heat it, and if you're going to supply milk to a mass population, it's going to be very difficult. So you're going to crowd those cows into a big barn. They're going to have more susceptibility to disease, and when you do that, you've got to homogenize and you've got to pasteurize in order to make everything safe, in order to make the end product still nice by the time it makes that long journey. And Yet what you have is a product that it doesn't have any enzymes left in it. It's got molecules that are not the way they were when they came out of the cow, and so your body doesn't recognize them. It recognizes them as a toxin and it attacks them. So now you have dairy allergies and a lot of other food allergies. How about the very factory farms I'm talking about, where the animals are crowded in? Is that tending our garden? Is that taking care of our world? Is that being kind to the animals? No, it's not. It's cruel. And they get sick, and they're just become a commodity that is traded and not a living creature that was made by our Elohim. What about the pesticides that we have to spray on the fields, and the fertilizers and the Roundup and all of those things that have been shown over and over to be terrible for our health? But we have to do it if we're going to use those massive fields to feed the cities. Instead of having fields around each city where each city is self-sufficient with the food that they need, we have to have pesticides and Roundup and all that. What about our busy lifestyles? In order to keep up with all of this technology, we have to be drinking caffeine all day long. I'm not opposed to caffeine entirely. It is naturally present in the coffee bean and in the chocolate bean, the cocoa bean. But the amounts that we drink it to boost ourselves up so we can keep going in this fast-paced society, so that we can keep the things being traded from place to place, keep the commerce going. What about the water? To supply water to all of these people, we need fluoride, and well, we don't need it, but that's what they'll tell us, and chlorinated water and all these things that harm us. We have the synthetic vitamins because now people are starting to get sick, so let's manufacture things like that. And well, we don't need plants, we don't need herbs, we don't need seeds, we'll just give them a vitamin. I'm not opposed to vitamins, I take vitamins, but is that where our source of food is supposed to be, or is it a band-aid because our world is so messed up? And honestly, what about the products we put on our bodies and the products we put in our homes, and the ways that we're slowly poisoning ourselves as we live in this luxurious Babylon that is ours? So I say all of that, but I think if I walked into my kitchen, I would find pretty much everything on that list. You'll find something that I've broken my own rule, so to speak, because I also struggle. Because here's what happens. We talked in our earlier video today about how you have to have muscle to produce something in a society. So you have to use your own muscles, or you have to use animal muscles, or you have to use servants, or heaven forbid, slaves. Or in our society, we have the muscles of machines. So since that's the society that we live in, we can use some of those things to our advantage to be able to help get back to the creation that He created and the intention He had for us. And by the way, instead of slaves, let's teach our children, and let's do things together, and our children can provide some of the muscle to help get food on the table that is good for us. So don't think that you, Mom, have to slave in the kitchen all by yourself. I do not think so. I think the whole family should work together, and the little ones too. When my kids, they're all big now, but when they were little, it was so much fun to do things together in the kitchen. The kids love to have a stool pulled up next to the counter and to help make whatever it is that you're making, to have their own little child-sized aprons and their own little bowls and tools. It's just, every child loves this. We are designed to love being around food and to preparing food. So Mom, here are some things that you can do. Let's get really practical about this, okay? Let's first of all be more efficient with our muscles, okay? So here's some ways that you can be more efficient and save some of that muscle work that you're having to do to prepare your own foods in your own kitchen from healthy sources. First of all, let's get yourself an apron and strap it on, okay? An apron that has pockets and is going to keep your shirt clean and keep you in the mind to work. Get something that's fun and shows off your personality, but an apron, I highly recommend it. Again, this is a tip and suggestion, it's not written in Leviticus or anything. You might want to have step stools and bar stools and little chairs and places for your children to work and places for you to be able to reach storage. And if you're short and you can't reach something, a step stool is so helpful. Have a good quality knife. Have good scissors that you can cut things with in the kitchen. Scissors are great in the kitchen. Have plenty of storage containers. Remember we were talking about a civilization has to have pottery? Well, we have Tupperware and plastic. Maybe we have ceramic and glass, and I think that's probably better. How about places to put all the stuff? Okay, we'll come back to that one. How about dough scrapers and rolling pins and bread machines and mixers so that you can make your own bread? pots and pans and skillets that are made of materials that won't hurt you, and like as they off-gas things, okay? How about a grain mill and a mixer so that you can make your own grain at home or your own flours? How about a freezer and a dishwasher and all of those things? I don't have a dishwasher, so I don't have everything I just said. Well, I have most of those things, but you don't have to have them all. When I first started out, I didn't have them all. You can be really creative. For instance, if you go to the kitchen aisle and you want to get yourself a dough scraper to make your own bread from scratch, they're pretty expensive. But if you go over to the hardware section and get a scraper that they use to make, to do drywall or things like that, it's so much cheaper. So it doesn't have to be the high-end stuff. Okay, you can be creative in this. So there are a couple things is you're going to be efficient in the kitchen. When you pick something up, don't just put it down when you're done with it. Put it away, okay? And if it's dirty, that means it either goes in the sink or the dishwasher. Get it right in there. Don't make yourself have to touch things over and over again and make a big pile that has to be cleaned up at the end. Clean up as you go. There should be a place for everything and everything in its place, right? When you're not using it. Like that means you need baskets and containers and cupboards and shelves. And if you don't have all that, before you get going on making all your food from scratch, think about where you're going to store it first. Like that's a wise thing to do. But some bookshelves that you can make from scratch yourself from inexpensive materials such as pallets and so on. And then find canned mason jars and things like that on Facebook Marketplace or wherever you can source things. You don't have to spend a lot of money if you're savvy about it, okay? And then keep them at their point of use. Don't make yourself have to hike to get to your storage. Be really thoughtful about how you lay out your kitchen and your workspace so that you save the muscles and not have to go up and down stairs or have to do a long distance. If you need a knife in 2 different places in the kitchen over and over again, then get 2 knives so that you can keep it in its place. Things like Sharpies so you can label, put masking tape on or a cute label or whatever, a chalk if you want to get one of those chalk labels. Make sure that you are well organized, and I would put some thought into that. Don't just dive in and say, I'm going to make all my own food today. Like, give yourself some weeks and months to think about how you would do it, and YouTube is just full of all kinds of awesome ideas for this. Don't keep unnecessary things in your kitchen. Things that don't belong in a kitchen should be out of there, okay? So that will help a lot. I mean, if it's not kitchen or food related, why is it there? It should be where it's used and stored in a much more logical place somewhere else in the house. But also your Tupperware containers or whatever, if they're missing a lid, maybe it's time to say goodbye to them, okay? Or give them a new use somewhere. Make sure that everything has everything it needs in order to work. And if it's missing a piece, get it out of there until you come up with a solution, and then it can go back, right? You could have one place that's a junk drawer. I'm getting bit by a fly, so I keep wobbling. You could have one junk drawer. I like having one junk drawer in my kitchen for just those odds and ends. And that way, if you do really feel like something needs to be in there, but you have no idea where to put it, it can go in the junk drawer. And then once a year, when Passover comes and you're cleaning out your kitchen to get all the yeast out, then you can clean out your junk drawer, and that works. But so it's like you can have a little bit of junk, but the rest of it, keep your kitchen really efficient. And then clean your countertops as you work. Shine the sink before you go to bed at night so that the kitchen is clean when you turn off the lights. Wash the stove off, clean your oven, sweep the floor, okay? And then in our next session today, we're going to talk about some routines on how to get that done. So you're going to need the muscle and be efficient about things, right? Really do spend time thinking about that. Second of all, you need the money. It's not cheap, because remember, our economy is being built up by the trade that is happening worldwide, and that's where the things are inexpensive. So if you go to your local big box store where they have been trading with China and India and so on, you're going to be able to find a better price for things than if you have to make it yourself from scratch. And I think this is going to change, like I've already been saying, when we get to the kingdom. But for now, you really have to be careful. I think this is a good time to say, first of all, before you spend all your money, take out your tithe. Take out the 10% that belongs to Yehovah and set it aside for the poor and the widow and for those who teach you in the word and for the feasts. set those 3 feasts that you're going to need money for, set that aside and then let God bless you. Okay, that's really, really important. And then don't lust for things. I know I've just listed a bunch of gadgets and stuff that you might want to have, but if you don't have the money for it, do without it and say, thank you, Father, for what I have, and be content with the things that you have. You can ask for wisdom and He will help you. John 10:10 has been a really important verse to me. As I thought about food over the last 10, 15, 20 years. In John 10:10 it says, the thief does not come except to steal, to kill, and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. So when you're trying to make a decision at the store and you're trying to compare 2 products and maybe one is a little bit more expensive or would require more work on your part, more prep work, remember that the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And while it may look cheaper, it may kill you health-wise. So you need to be wise and think, how would Yeshua feed me? If he were running the world, which one would he do? And it'll help you make good choices and help you not to lust after things. A simple tip. In an ideal world, if you had the time and energy and all the supplies and the money to get the supplies to start with, you would never buy what you could make at home, okay? Now that's not totally true because trade and having a city is not all bad. So maybe don't buy what you could make in your own community from scratch. So maybe making use of a local farmer's market, or just making friends in your towns and with people who have the ability to make homemade bread. Maybe you could have the ability to make something else like chicken soup from scratch. Or basically, if every single woman would get her talents and then live in some sort of a community, it would lower the workload, right? But if you don't have that, and most of the people that as we're watching this, we're separated by a long distance from each other. We wish we lived next door. We really do, but not yet. That's not where we are. So try to learn how to make as many things you can from scratch, and you won't be perfect at it. I'm not expecting you to. I'm not perfect at it. I don't have time to be perfect at it. I'm going to give those excuses I just said I wasn't allowed to do, but let's be realistic, okay? So there are some things, though, that you can make from scratch yourself. You can save up your money over time and get a wheat grinder and your own mixers so that it doesn't take that much muscle, and you can make your own bread from scratch. You can make sourdough bread or artisan bread that doesn't have to rise or that doesn't have to be kneaded, and you can, without too much work, you really can make your own bread from scratch. So I'm going to put a lot of links below. I have a website that I don't talk about very much. It's called Anne's Health Place. And if you go there, I've got a lot of tips and ideas, but there are so many on YouTube. I'm not really the expert anymore because I spend most of my time making curriculum and I don't spend that much time writing about health. So I kind of recommend that you go to other experts that are doing it right now and are like up to date in 2022 with all the newest resources. But I got some ideas for you in your handout. So things like pancake mix and soups and even your own tinctures and vitamins, not your own vitamins, but your own herbal tinctures and remedies for sicknesses. You can learn to make all of that yourself. Goodness, supplements alone would save you gobs of money if you could make your own things at home. But most of all, learning to be content with where the Father has you right now. You can always be educating yourself. If you can't do it today, at least watch videos about it and read books and make friends with people who do know how to do it. And you'll find that in time, you'll be able to start incorporating more and more things into your life. It says in 1 Timothy 4, verses 4 through 5, every creature of God is good, and nothing is to be refused if it is received with thanksgiving, for it is sanctified by the word of God and prayer. So even though our life is not perfect, when you thank Him for what you have and for what He has provided for you, I've noticed that He fills you with joy and peace, and He starts to give you a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more, and as you do well in that, He gives you a little bit more, almost like He's a parent or something, right? And that's how we treat our children. So we've got energy efficient ways to reduce our muscle work in the kitchen. We've got maybe the start of a budget and figuring out how to pay for and source everything. And now we need time to prep the food. I have found in our family, and we have 9 of us generally eating dinner on most nights. It depends if a girlfriend's coming over, or a grandma's coming over too, or my husband's sister comes over, or we have guests in, especially as you get near Sabbath. So some 9 to 12 people is what we're feeding on a normal night in our house, and that is a lot of work. Now, I have teenage daughters. We didn't do, we did have 9 people when they were all little, and I had to do all the work then, but it's a lot harder. But I also found out that I was pretty good at putting the systems into place, and that's what I want to encourage you to do. The first thing you need to do is a system of having spots on your schedule to prepare the food. And I know you're a homeschool mom, and I know you have other things on your plate. So if you're going to be making your food from scratch and prepping those meals, you've got to put it on your schedule. It takes about 45 minutes for a normal family to prepare food and get it on the table. A family our size, and if you have a big family, you're going to know this is true, it takes longer than that. Like most nights, it takes us an hour to an hour and a half to get food on the table. It just depends on how much of it we're making ourselves, how much chopping we're doing, how much fermenting we're doing, how many sauces we're making from scratch. So when you purchase things to make at home, you need to know that it's going to take time. So if you have a young family and just small children, it won't take you that long. When I was a young mom, I used to aim for 20 minutes in the kitchen. And then as I started preparing food more and more, and as my children got older and frankly eating more, it did take a little bit longer. But as a nursing mom, I never really had an hour and a half to spend in the kitchen. I was way too tired even if I did have the time. So do the best you can. And it's that good, better, best principle. If there are some things that you can purchase at the store that are already made for you, that as you're reading the ingredients, they are a lot better choice than, say, one over here that's full of chemicals that you can't pronounce. That can be your assistant right now and help you get food on the table faster. So pay attention to how long it takes you. If you've never made food from scratch, you're going to need to add a little bit of a window of time, a cushion on there to help you have that time to learn new skills. Okay? So make sure that's on your schedule. That's my point. So here are some ideas. In the morning for breakfast, I like to soak our grains. If we're going to eat grains, I try to do one of these 3. Soaked grains, like soaked oatmeals and soaked cream of wheat, things like that. Or I like to sprout my grains. So sprouted flour makes a very delicious bread, but that takes a bit of work, so I don't do that often. Or sourdough. Sourdough also has reduced the phytate content in my grains, and it makes it much easier for me to digest them. So I try to do soaked, sprouted, or sourdough. Sourdough, a lot of times I don't have the time to make my bread from scratch, so I was able to find a good source of sourdough bread that didn't have even any yeast in it. It was completely naturally made from organic grains. So that's a good compromise for me at this season in life because I just didn't have time to make it. But for many years, and I have a grinder and a mixer, for many years I have made my own bread and soaked and sprouted or sourdough'd my bread. And I just used 2 basic things, a cookbook called Nourishing Traditions, and no, not everything in that cookbook is clean biblically, so you're going to have to pay attention to that. But otherwise, I got a lot of instruction from it on how to make my food from scratch and how much motivation to have my own garden as well. So the other thing is a cool YouTube channel called The Healthy Home Economist. And no, she also does not eat completely clean. She eats pork and so on. So you're going to have to pay attention, okay? Maybe some of you guys need to make a cool YouTube channel that teaches other moms, okay? But the basic idea for breakfast, if I'm going to do soaked, sprouted, or sourdough grains with my breakfast, and we often have eggs and cream and butter and things like that at breakfast, the basic rule of thumb is that I have to think about that before I go to bed the night before. So I have a recipe book that I sell on Foundations Press. It's just a super cheap ebook on how to make breakfast easy. And those recipes, every single thing in there could be made by soaking, sprouting, or sourdoughing if you wanted to. You could make them the traditional way as well. When I say traditional, like the normal American way. But you could do that with every single recipe, but you would have to have started it the night before. So that's my point. You need to have a spot in there where you can get breakfast ready before you go to bed at night so that when you wake up in the morning, you have an idea of what you're going to eat. For lunch, we often have leftovers, frankly. But what I love to have is soup. So making my own bone broth at home is super good for us. It's good for our gut, keeps leaky gut down, it helps our digestion. It just helps in a multitude of ways. It's full of minerals and good salts and things like that. So I like to have my own chicken or beef or fish stock that I made at home. But I usually, as soon as breakfast is over, start that simmering, okay? So if I need to make a whole fresh pot of stock, that's when I start it, is right after breakfast. And then we go get started on school. Well, that's bubbling away, okay? But most of the days I'm using stock that I've already made in advance, and it's from the freezer. So I've got, I defrost that jar in a bowl of hot water for enough minutes that I can get the rock of icy stock out of the mason jar, and then I start some soup. Maybe I cut up an onion real quick and saute it in some butter with some celery and maybe a little bit of carrots. That just takes a few minutes while we're cleaning up the kitchen from breakfast, okay? And that soup, then I pour the stock in that has been sitting in the bowl of hot water, and then I let that start to cook, and I add whatever vegetables we can quickly chop up. And sometimes I can chop those vegetables at supper time when I'm chopping vegetables for supper anyway. Cut a few extras and have them ready to go so they're in the pot, ready to be starting to simmer for my soup for lunch. Another idea is to take some time once in a while and chop up lots of vegetables, especially with the gardens coming in right now. You can do this, and then stick them in the freezer in individual bags so that you've got frozen bags of vegetables ready to go in some soup, or whatever you're going to have for lunch. See how you think it ahead and you have it prepared. The only thing you needed to do that was time. And frankly, a plan, okay? So like thinking of all these ideas and where are you going to put it in your schedule so that you can have things at your fingertips, your own prepared, easy foods, just like you were if you were eating all store-bought foods, okay? Great things that kids love and can help with are raw vegetables with your own homemade dips, and let them learn to peel and chop the vegetables. How about fruits and cream cheese dips? How about all kinds of cheeses and things? Now it gets expensive, so you can also learn to make your own cheese at home if you have a source for milk. And so, find a farmer and learn how to make your own cheeses, and they're yummy. And teaching your children how to make those things means they will want to eat them, which means that they'll have healthy snacks. Finding a good source of raw milk, my goodness, that's like one of the top priorities I've had as we've moved to new homes over the years is, okay, where am I going to find a farmer? Right? That's a really high priority. You can also make homemade cookies. So if you're sprouting some of your own grain, and then, it takes a couple days to go through that process, but you can just constantly be doing that every day. And after breakfast is a good time to check on those things. But you might be able to throw some of those dried out sprouted grains, so you wouldn't want to put them in wet and gooky, okay? But you've dried them now, and there's no moisture left inside, and you put them into your grain mill, and you make some awesome flour that now you can use in any of the recipes you like, such as chocolate chip cookies and oatmeal raisin cookies. You've soaked your oats, you've soaked or sprouted your flour. Usually sprouting works better for cookies, and you can make the yummy recipes, and now your kids have very good snacks. And then when it's math time and they're hungry, you can say, go get a cookie, okay? So it's really wise. It just takes some time to think ahead. Where are you going to put all that in your schedule? You probably can't do all of this. Smoothies and homemade yogurt, just sending the kids into the kitchen to have a snack, some yogurt with some berries in it, is a much easier thing than having to do those cookies I just told you about. My kids love to make their own smoothies, and so I try to have some good yogurt or even some kefir on hand so that they can make their own smoothies. And frozen berries, those are low in sugar and yet very good for their brains. So you can kind of see these snacks and lunchy things have to be prepared ahead for, but it's not like they take that much work. Teach your kids to clean up though. When they're making a smoothie, they got to clean up, wipe the counter, rinse it out, put it in the dishwasher, okay? What about condiments? You can make your own ketchups and mustards and mayonnaises, and they're not that difficult if you have the tools and you practiced a few times. And now you can have salad dressings and all of the sauces and condiments that you could buy at the store, but these are full of good vitamins and nutrition for you, and enzymes and all of the rest, and no rancid oils and no hydrogenated things. So they're not that hard to do. Don't try to tackle this in one day. So like over the course of an entire many school years, you can get a good cookbook or learn to follow a good blogger online who can teach you how to cook. And that's basically what you're learning. Some of the things that you're going to want to add, I think I've named all of them, except for maybe canning and freezing from your own garden, which that's a whole nother thing, okay? And frankly, consider the subjects you're teaching in school. Maybe you should be spending time teaching some of this in the garden instead. It would just be a good use of your time, and your children are learning valuable things. So I think prep time needs to be added to your schedule. Not just prep for breakfast, lunch, and supper, but a prep time, okay? And you're going to have to make this work with your lifestyle and how your schedule goes. But for me, in the years when I was making a lot of things from scratch, an hour a day minimum was needed. And if you don't have an hour, let's say you only have 15 minutes because you're a nursing mom and you have only that much energy, then get in the kitchen, set a timer, put on, like, I know 15 minutes is about 3 to 4 songs on YouTube playlist, okay? So I put on my YouTube playlist and I work until those songs are done, and then I rinse up, clean up, put stuff in the dishwasher, and go on. I don't actually have a dishwasher at the moment, by the way. I'm saying that because many years I did when I was doing this, and that worked out great. But if I didn't have a dishwasher, I would rinse it and soak it and be, whatever is needed so that cleanup is easy at the next mealtime. That only takes maybe 5 minutes. So you might have been 20 minutes in the kitchen and you didn't get as much done as the lady that has 4 teenage daughters and can have, do all the stuff. But you did get some done, and you can replace some of the junk with homemade, good-for-you food that God created, and you can pronounce. So, let's see. Now, I talked about looking at the ingredients and seeing, can you pronounce it? But also, look at the ingredients and the things that are in your stores and ask, could I make that? Like, how did they even go into business in the first place? When Campbell's, the company, Campbell's, makes Campbell's soup and so on, when they first went into business, it was because someone knew how to make soup in their own kitchen, right? And they thought, okay, how could I share this with a few people? Let's go backwards. Let's de-engineer that, okay? How did they get that flavor? Now, nowadays, to save cost and to make their flavor consistent so that they can have a more consistent sales and marketing, they use chemicals and natural flavorings that our body does not recognize, and your body will attack it, and you'll have food allergies, and it doesn't contain the nutrition that it would if you made it from your own garden and your own animals. But having said that, what are the things in there that give it the flavor? What are the things in it that make us like it? And you can research and you can learn how to make a delicious bowl of cream of mushroom soup if you happen to like that. Or if you want to make a recipe that has cream of mushroom soup, like a casserole or something, you can learn how to make your own white sauce that tastes just as good, if not better, than the Campbell's version. So I just want to inspire you to look at the ingredients, look at the labels and say, could I do that? Maybe you can't today, but it could be a goal for 2 years from now. You can start by watching YouTubes and just learning, right? Then I want you to, so because of that, I want you to try to think of one new thing every single week that you could make. And in our family, what we do is we actually set aside a day for trying new things. For many years, it was Thursday evenings. Now it's more tending to be on a Sunday evening when we try new things, but it just varies according to our season. Pick a night that's going to be experimenting night. And some nights it flops, it really does, but you might need a little extra time for this. You might need time to prep it, time to research it, time to look things up and watch videos. So you might need to schedule this in. I love schedules. But it's also a good night to get more helpers in the kitchen, more people in there, and you can experiment together. And if you mess up, then you just laugh about it, okay? Don't get mad. It's okay, all right? You're going to mess up. I do all the time. So this brings me to having a plan. You need to have a menu. So not just the night that you're experimenting. I recommend that for a homeschooling mom, all the other nights, you need to make sure that you are making things that you know how to make and that you can reliably get on the table, because you don't, remember we talked about habits? The more things that you can put on autopilot, the less stress you're going to have in your life. So a lot of the nights of the week need to be on autopilot. Things that you've made before, you know you can do it, and you know you can get it on the table in time. So that requires having a menu. Before you go to the grocery list, decide what you're going to have for breakfast, lunch, supper, and snacks for all 7 days of the week. It will sound like a lot of planning right now, but by the time you've done it for a while and you've started to get those menus that I don't throw mine away. I keep them, okay? We keep ours on a computer actually. And so what we do is we reuse them. So next summer I can go back to this summer's menus and I can go, oh, that was a good one. We're going to do that again. And I don't have to keep thinking them up. It's only hard at first. If you're a member of Homeschooling Torah, you can go on our website and we'll provide you with menus. We have a menu for every single week of the entire year. Now, I'm not going to say that all our menus are free of chemicals and store-bought foods, because that's how I cook. I go online, I find a recipe that says put in Campbell's cream and mushroom soup. And I go, I don't have to do that. I could just make my own white sauce that tastes just as good. And now instead of getting the can of cream and mushroom soup, I just make my own. But I can still use that recipe as the guide for what I eat. So maybe when someone in the house might have a gluten allergy or be eating low carb, instead of having mashed potatoes with my meal, like if that's what the menu calls for, because some people can have mashed potatoes. Some people in our house, we don't. So we might have a mashed cauliflower and just throw some, a block of cream cheese in with it and put it in the food processor, and it tastes yummy. It's just as good as mashed potatoes, but it's low carb. So you don't have to follow those menus, anyone's menus, to the letter. They're a guide to help you know what to have for dinner that night if you can't think of something. And so even though at this point in my life it's another daughter that is planning the menus with my husband, the two of them do it together, and yet it's my oldest daughter and I who made the menus on Homeschooling Torah. So we don't always have the same taste as my youngest daughter and my husband that are making ours currently. We can go on the Homeschooling Torah website and we can look at that week's menu and we can go, yeah, that sounds like good, because I was drawing a blank what we were going to have on Wednesday night. Okay, so that's what we do. Then, okay, so you've got your plan, you've got your menu, you've got your budget, you know when you're going to work on things on your schedule. Now, when you're tired, put somewhere on the side of your fridge or inside a cupboard door a list of some simple recipes, some simple reminders of what you were going to prep at different times. Reminders. Don't make yourself have to do everything on your brain. Put it on autopilot. And if there's no way to put it on autopilot, then make a reminder list or even alarms for your phone that this is when you thought you were going to go work on it. And even if you couldn't do it at that exact second, you remembered, oh yeah, I was going to check the sourdough this afternoon. Okay, I'm going to snooze that one for 10 minutes and then I will be able to do that, okay? So also you might want to keep on the fridge a piece of just a pad of paper where you can write down things that you're running low on in the house so you don't forget them when you go to the store, because there's nothing worse. Just make the refrigerator or a cupboard area inside a cupboard door or somewhere in your kitchen, kind of your command central, where you are going to put all the things that help you to stay on task. I like to put just one or two favorite cookbooks there. I like to put a mug with some pens and a Sharpie. I have some rubber bands in that spot because I like to put rubber bands around different mason jars to remind me of what's in it. I know maybe that's silly, but that's what I do. I have like a green one and a cream colored one, and anyway, those remind me. I don't have to put a whole label on something, but I can remember what's in there. Anyway, all those things, command central, that and your apron and a timer, and you are set to go. Maybe some music to help you keep going. Make sure that your pantry is organized and that you check through it before you go to the store so you remember what you need. By organized, you're going to think we're crazy, but in our family we really do alphabetize things. Not necessarily the whole pantry is alphabetized, but our spices are alphabetized, our canned goods are alphabetized if we do have canned goods, and our homemade things are alphabetized as well. So have a system, whatever system you do. Adam was made to classify things, as we have learned this week. You and your children will all be able to maintain the system if you have a system and everybody in the house knows what it is and is in agreement on how to use it. It'll just be so much easier. Then finally, just make sure your kitchen stays clean, that you have a time on your schedule for keeping the refrigerator wiped out. I like to wipe out my refrigerator, or actually my daughter it's her job at this season in life. But we like to do it before we go shopping each week because it's most empty at that point. So you don't have to move as many things to wipe out all the drawers, to wipe out all the shelves and to make sure that the sides and the front and the handles are all, no stickies. That's a job that should be done every week. Same with your oven and your top of your stove. Every day, the top of your stove, right? Any appliances that you have, that you keep them wiped clean, that you wash off the front of your cupboard doors, that you sweep the floors, that you put the garbage away on a regular basis. So all of these things will make you want to be in the kitchen. My kitchen's old. It's from the 70s, maybe the 60s. I'm not sure. My house is pretty old and it's kind of ugly, but we can make it a pretty place by putting cute plaques on the wall, by my towels. I can make them match. I can have a pretty kitchen mat. There's lots of ways that you can make your kitchen look happy and friendly without having to pay $30,000 to redo it. I'm not talking about that. You don't need to have the newest and the greatest. You can have an old kitchen and still make it a happy, pleasant place to be. Music does it for me. So, you've got yourself organized, your kitchen is clean, you've been making a menu, you've got the times and the schedules, you've got the budget, you know what you're going to be wanting to start learning how to cook and make. Now it's time, if you do have any junk food in your pantry or in your cupboards, I wouldn't start by throwing it all out, because you might starve and you're going to find you're going to just replace it all anyway. You haven't even learned how to do that yet. Like, why throw away all the potato chips until you've learned how to make your own? Okay, that's a big one. So you need to have something to replace all the bad things with before you get rid of it. I'm just saying, unless it's unclean foods. Unclean foods can go out the door today. But just the junk food that you want to learn how to make, why don't you just take a Sharpie and put an X on every single thing, a big one, so it's really obvious, but a big black X on it. You'll be tempted to replace it sooner, because your kids are going to say, why does it have an X on it? And you're going to say, because it's bad for us. Oh, then why are we eating it? You're going to say, because I haven't learned how to make it myself. And they're going to like, well, let's learn. So those X's were very motivating for me. The only other thing that you have to think about with meal prep and getting the food on the table is Sabbath. Sabbath adds a layer of difficulty to our lives that if we didn't grow up with Sabbath, we're not used to. But it also adds a layer of amazing efficiency in kitchen management, house management, that all of the people that aren't keeping Sabbath will never get. And I love this cartoon. Basically, the Sabbath chicken is saying, you thought Thanksgiving was bad. We get this every single Sabbath. And it just makes me laugh, but it also makes me realize that we are going to have higher skills. We are going to have better abilities than the rest of the world. So don't hate it. Look at Sabbath as a way that you're going to get perfected, but it just takes planning ahead. I would suggest lighter schoolwork on that day. Don't try to do all of it. Why do you have to do school on that day at all? You might be able to just do a couple subjects if you wanted, or none. Maybe do just Bible, or maybe give a spelling test and a math test and then call it a day. You could school year round, and then you won't even need those days to count towards your attendance requirements if you live in a state where it's required. So be creative. You don't have to do everything on that day. And here's another point. You don't have to do everything. Why are you in the kitchen doing all the work? Why are you cleaning everything? Why are you, Mom, doing all that? Why are your kids not helping? Get them in there, give them jobs to do, help them learn to do it with a happy attitude and the big reward of rest that's coming, okay? I usually think that you can do your Bible time in the morning to get everybody's attitudes and their heart in the right place, and then start to assign jobs and start with the food that needs to be prepped ahead of time to prepare it. If you're going to make it from scratch for 2 whole days, right? You're not going to work on Sabbath. Once that sun goes down, you're not going to prepare any more food. So you want to be preparing it on Friday morning. As soon as Bible time is over, start planning ahead what you're going to make. Probably Thursday night you needed to pull food out of the freezer if anything is frozen. Assign cleaning jobs if you'd clean on that day. We have a lot of company on Friday evenings, and so we do clean on Fridays because I like to have my house clean when company comes over. And it's a good motivator to me and all my kids as well. And they've gotten very good at this. They've been doing this now for a good 12, 13 years, and they're very used to it. So I am blessed to have children that have grown up with this system. And when it's new, and I was in that spot too, it's a lot harder. And I would suggest paper plates and things. I know they're not as good, but I don't have a dishwasher. What can you do to make Sabbath easier? One of our sponsors has given you a fantastic ebook this week on how to prepare for Sabbath. So I'm not going to go into all of her ideas, but don't schedule other things that day. Like, that's not a good day for co-op. That's not a good day to try to go do all the grocery shopping and get your oil changed and all the other things. If you don't have to, try to make that prep day. That's the day you concentrate on getting your home and your hearts ready for Sabbath. Again, put the happy music on and get ready for the wonderful gift of Sabbath that he gives to you. So those are my basic ideas for getting food on the table. I'm not going to say on keep your sanity, because honestly, there will be days you lose your sanity as you learn all these new skills. See, you have to understand, Mom, you're in school too. And the school that you're in is learning to run the world according to the Torah and to do things the way he originally intended, but that's not what you're used to. This is a learning curve. It's a steep learning curve, and you need to be patient with yourself and realize that it's going to take years for you to learn the skill of meal preparation. So don't beat yourself up if you don't have it down after the first week of school. And as your kids are learning all their academic subjects, you're learning to be a manager of your home. And so be patient with yourself. You can do it. Join our community at homeschoolingtorah.com so that we can help each other. So I think that would be a really fun thing to talk about in the community, and to show pictures of what we're making in our kitchens and to encourage one another. Do you agree? I hope you'll join us. At homeschoolingtorah.com, one of our goals is for us to be able to use the Bible as our primary textbook. That means for every subject, not just Bible class in the morning. That means as we learn our language arts, as we learn mathematics, as we learn history, as we learn science, as we learn art, as we learn PE, as we learn Hebrew and foreign languages. Every single subject really should have its foundation in the Bible, because is not our God the founder and creator of all truth? Is it really possible to use the Bible as your primary textbook? Yes, it absolutely is. You know what? I think we should show the world how great our Creator is and how much truth He packed into His Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Let's put that Word into our children. Let's take Him up on His promises that His Bible is sufficient for everything we need for life and godliness. And let's use the Bible as our primary textbook. If you need help, come join us. Homeschoolingtorah.com.